Welcome, everyone. Welcome. I've given people a bit more time than usual because I know that usually people log in last minute when we do this type of um, talks. So I will start straight away. I will not wait as usual. But in the meantime, while I'm introducing myself and Rick, please do say hello in the chat. And if for any reasons we have any sound issues, as always, just give me some feedback. Hopefully you guys can hear us and see us okay, but if not, please do give us a shout. So welcome to this month's and the first for this academic year Tizard Behavioural Talk. I'm Thanos Vostanis. I'm a lecturer at the Tizard Center at the University of Kent, and the behavioural talks are our way of disseminating good practice in applied behaviour analysis and its related fields. Now, for those of you that do not know Tizard Center, we offer courses in autism, intellectual developmental disabilities, and of course, applied behavior analysis and positive behavior support. And we have options for campus-based and distance learning students. So if anybody's interested in learning more about the science, please do reach out to us and check our website, which I'll put in the chat. Now, for this talk, you've probably already seen Dr. Kubina's bio, so I'm not going to go into that, but just to say that he's, of course, one of the most prominent precision teachers, and he's also doing quite a lot of work recently with technology and utilizing technology to our advantage as a field. So this is something that we are going to learn more about today. While Rick is presenting, just keep an eye out. I will interrupt him at 3 points and I will deliver 3 keywords. Make a note of those keywords. And then towards the end, I will post a link to a Microsoft form. Click on that link and add your keywords, add your name, add your BCBA number, and I will issue you with a CU. We have about 40 to 45 days to do so, so please do not worry if you don't get your CU within a week or so. It usually takes a bit longer, but we always provide the CUs for you guys. So, Rick, thank you for joining us today. I will let you take it away and start your presentation. I'll be supporting in the chat, and if there's anything, I will interrupt you and let you know about it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And if I could just plug my good colleague Thanos here, if I were doing things over, I would be coming to be your student because you are one of the fabulous folks that we have in the field, and just delighted to be here with you and of course watch all the amazing contributions that you're making. Just read your paper the other day, by the way, the one on precision teaching and joint attention. Fabulous work. Fabulous. Okay.
Well, I have to give credit to Rihanna Ritchie on that one. She spearheaded the project. So yeah, thank you for the positive feedback, Rick. We appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you about some research in AI. AI, by the way, I have the, I can't see the chat window open. I figured out my screen. I want to just jump right into this. AI, I'm not going to talk about what AI is. It's artificial intelligence, as I'm sure you all know, and it is starting to impact the field. And what I want to do as a researcher is look at how can we examine this technology and see if it benefits our field. And this research that I'm going to share with you was conducted with 2 of my other colleagues. Well, we had more of our colleagues, but these were 2 of my main ones. Kelly King, who is a colleague of mine at Central Reach, Bobby Newman, who's a director at Proud Moments. And let me start off by talking to you about AI and innovation. I'm going to award some pop culture points if someone can remember this movie.
Earlier, I was thinking about how I was annoyed, and this is going to sound strange, but I was really excited about that. And then I was thinking about the other things I've been feeling, and I caught myself feeling proud of that, proud of having my own feelings about the world, like the times I was worried about you, and things that hurt me, things I want. And then I had this terrible thought, like, are these feelings even real? Or are they just programming? And that idea really hurts. And then I get angry at myself for even having pain.
Yes, Tracy, you got it. This movie is Her. And if you haven't seen this, it's about a sensitive man, and he's heartbroken after his marriage ends. And that is just one of the famous actors of our time. And he falls in love with Samantha, who happens to be an AI. This was 2013, and the fact that this science fiction is pretty close to becoming science fact is amazing, considering this isn't a movie from people thinking about the 50s or the 60s or the 70s or even the 80s. This is 2013. That's about a little more than 10 years ago. And there's a couple terms I want to share with you all. One is an AI chatbot. These chatbots are no doubt you have all interacted with these chatbots, but a chatbot is driven by artificial intelligence. And what it can do is it engages in a dialogue that is very human-like. And there's something called NLP, or natural language processing. And what NLP does is it interprets the intonation, interprets the intent, whether this is through writing or through physically talking, and it can respond. It has these automated responses, and depending on what you say, it can interact in ways that would be very human-like and, of course, very useful. Here are two chatbots, which if you understand or you're using AI, I bet you many of you folks have already dealt with this. On the left, you can see that we have that's a screenshot for ChatGPT, which is offered by OpenAI. On the right, that's through Anthropic. That's called Claude. And I use those not only every day, I'll use them multiple times a day. So these are chatbots, and they have very specific goals, and they do things for us. I was making flight reservations the other day, and maybe some of you have interacted with the chatbots that are on websites. You go to Delta when I was here, and you can see the chatbot just comes right up. What's nice about this chatbot is they're saying, "Hi, I'm Delta's virtual assistant." So you know right away that you're interacting with the chatbot. And you can ask it all kinds of, like, they'll give you categories you can see at the bottom, but you can also just put questions in there like, "Hey, I have a question about, I need a refund because of blah, blah, blah." And the things that you say will be responded to depending on the sophistication of that chatbot. Now, some are a little more sneaky. Like, this is a local car dealership here where I live in Columbus, and this is Tansky Toyota. And you'll notice that it's Lily. And there's a picture of a woman, and you think you are interacting with someone, and it kind of bugs me when people do this, when they put a human face in you. It's a chatbot, but they're trying to make you think you're talking to a person, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm online. How can I help you with that RAV4?" And you think that this person is wanting to talk with you, but it's just a chatbot. So those are chatbots. You all have no doubt had, I would bet almost everyone on here has had experience with these chatbots, but there's another term that I want to share with you. And this is where the technology is going. And this is where movies like Her are presaging what's happening, or presaged what's happened now. And that's a term called companion bot. And companion bots, they are chat bots, but they take it up, they kick it up a notch. And what that means is they'll look for what you're saying, and they'll generate responses based on the type of interaction that you're having. And they want you to be more companion-like. And there are programs out there. Maybe some of you have heard of Replica. That's that's the most popular one right now. But there's AI Friend, there's Kindroid, and these companions can do all sorts of interesting things. For example, this comes from Replica. I'm taking, these are screenshots, and you'll see the way they describe themselves. The AI companion who cares. And what's interesting about these is it's not just straight chat, but you can see that there are avatars, and you can customize these avatars to your tastes. And you can also customize their personalities. If you want someone who's saucy, you can put that in there. If you want someone who's funny, if you want someone who's depressed and aggressive and snarky, you can literally put that all in there. And these chat bots, or these companion bots, are just exploding. They are, there's these stories of people spending 8 to 10 hours a day interacting with their custom chatbots. And this is a fascinating study that came out in Nature. Nature, very, very influential journal. And what they did in this study is they looked at people who were lonely. They looked at people that had suicidal ideation, people that engaged in self-harm. And they gave them access to these chatbots, which we can file these under as companions. And guess what they found? They found that there was less suicidal ideation. There was less self-harm. There were people reporting that they felt more connected and they were less lonely. In all of this, just think about this. This is all based on technology. There's not a human on the other end. I mean, just let that sink in right now. And this is Chat GPT-3. We're already at Chat GPT 4.0, and it's like this is funny because you would say it just feels old. Something that is 6 months or a year feels ancient in the time of AI. But Chat GPT-3 now is considered an old technology. But nevertheless, they did this study, and to see these type of effects, I find is very encouraging. And well, I won't go into. I literally could spend just so much time talking about chatbots and chat companions, but there are studies out there now where, in reports, where people are falling in love with their AI companions, and just like her, that's happening now. It's been happening. And that's not, maybe some of you that's surprising, maybe some of you that's not surprising. If you can program someone in on the other side, like I'm sure you've read these stories of these adults, older adults, and they don't necessarily even have to be older, but just adults who get scammed, and there's someone on the other end, and it's a human, and they're talking them, and then the next thing they're like, hey, send me some money in Bitcoin, or hey, send me some money for whatever, and they end up spending $200,000, and they've never seen that person in their life, but they do it with chatbots. So it shouldn't be that surprising. And of course, what's funny, I think, about this is the CEO of Replica, who happens to have a vested interest in this. She says, hey, you know what? It's okay if we marry these chatbots, which, yeah, of course you're going to say that because this is part of your company. But wow, just think about all the ethics that are going to be involved in this. And while I could talk a lot more in my introduction about this, I want you to think about this is going to happen not just in our lifetime. This is going to happen within the next few years. What happens when you put these super intelligent chatbots that can reason and can be they can be tailored to our preferences. What happens when you put those in robots? I mean, wow, there's going to be an incredible future that we're all going to be that's right around the corner that we're going to be interacting with. But what I wanted to do is, this is technology that's here now, and I happen to work for a company called Central Reach. By the way, I will acknowledge a conflict of interest. I'm going to be talking about products. I happen to be a equity owner in Central Reach, so I will expose that conflict. But this company that I work for, Central Reach, has these products, and I am the director of research. And so I did research with my fellow colleagues, and we had 3 questions that we asked. And these questions were surrounding RBT. So we have a chatbot. It's not released for public consumption at this point through Central Reach, and but we do have access to it, and I'm able to do research on it. So we had these 3 questions, and these 3 questions were, this chatbot, just like I just described you, this chatbot has been built on not just knowledge that's scraped from the internet. This is knowledge from very specific sources of behavior analysis. This has been vetted by BCBAs, BCBA-Ds, and it's customized knowledge. So this chatbot is built on all of this specialized knowledge. And we wanted to know, if we gave this to RBTs, RBT or BTs, that stands for behavior technician, registered behavior technician. These are folks that would serve under a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst. What kind of usage pattern would they have? In other words, would they use it at all? This is a descriptive study, and we wanted to ask these very basic questions. A second question that we asked was, we're calling this Care Copilot. That's the name that Central Reach has given it. Does this chatbot that's designed for these BTs and RBTs, is there social validity for it, for people that are using and applying behavior analysis? And we have questions that we ask them. And then a third question we ask is, does this affect retention at all? If you are in if you're in an applied setting, one of the things that, and you work with RBTs or BTs, one of the things that you'll know is there can be very high turnover rate. And that turnover rate comes for all sorts of reasons, not necessarily because the organization is a bad organization. That could be true, but it could also be because people are poaching your well-trained BTs. You do a good job of it, and people want your staff, and they'll offer a lot of money. There's all kinds of reasons. So at any rate, we wanted to know, would this chatbot support retention? So based on what I shared with you about AI, AI is here. AI is going to become increasingly intertwined in all the things that we do as behavior analysts. It's just going to happen. How fast it happens is unknown, but it is happening. This study, we wanted to look at, well, what would we find in terms of those 3 questions if we did a controlled study? And the way we did this, my colleague, Bobby Newman, he is the executive director clinical director at Proud Moments ABA, and they're in several states. They're a very large organization, and they provide behavior analytic services to all sorts of people. They have in-home, they have centers, and they have outreach. And like any ABA organization, whether you're a small organization or a big organization, they have challenges. And some of those challenges are onboarding behavior therapists. And you can imagine, if you're an organization that is serving many people, the more people you have, the bigger this challenge is. Okay, I see Jeff, I'm just picking up on your question there. You asked, how long was the care co-pilot trained under supervised learning before the machine learning was turned on? That is a fabulous question. You can, don't quote me on this specifically, but I want to say it was 6 months. It might have been a little bit less. It might have been a little longer. But that's the number that's jumping out. So at least half a year did we have all of this information, that we did a lot of internal vetting ourselves before we released this to the public. So it did take a while to train this. And I will, that is a really good question, because AI is not a perfect technology, as I'll come to talk about. And you do have to supervise these AIs out of the box. They make mistakes. They do what's called hallucination. They hallucinate. And I'll talk about how we have some BCBAs that were involved in this study and helped us further do some supervised learning. So very, very good question. Thank you for that. Okay.
Before you crack on, let me just deliver the first keyword. Folks, for your CU, the first keyword is chatbot. For your first CU, the first keyword is chatbot. Keep in mind that I've posted in the chat the link you will use to add those keywords. I will also add it later on, but do monitor your chat as well. Thanks, Rick.
Yep. Okay, where's my cursor? There we go. So with Proud Moments, we decided, you know what, you're a great partner. Let's work together. The way we started off with this study is we had, these weren't randomized. As I said, this is a descriptive study, and these are convenience samples that we had. We had 2 groups of users that received access to the chatbot. We went in their Tennessee region, and we went in their New York region. And you can see that we had 12 participants from Tennessee and 24 participants from New York. We had another group that was from Florida, and we had 32 participants. They didn't get any access to the chatbot. Now, mind you, with Proud Moments, they have a very specific way that they onboard their clients. They have processes that they would do that would happen across their different the different folks who work in their organization that are in their different states. These regions, of course, you get variability. If you don't know the states, Tennessee is a very different state from New York, which is a different state from Florida. They are geographically different, and of course, I mean, everywhere you go, you have different folks, but these were different. And I will say this too, when we started off our study, we wanted brand new RBTs and BTs. Well, most of these were BTs, which meant they were studying for the several of these were studying for the 40-hour course. And what we found is, of that group, we had to expand it, which is why we brought on the New York cohort, because we just didn't have enough. And the other thing is, you can't force people to engage in a chatbot. And the way the funding worked, the way folks would get paid, is they'd have to be assigned to a client. So if you were brand new, which is what we originally thought, like, let's just work with people brand new, haven't done anything. Well, what we found out and what we didn't anticipate was these folks weren't assigned for clients, therefore they weren't using the chatbot. So we had to increase the number of folks, and that's where we opened up the New York region. We asked demographic questions, and you can see that, as is typical, we had most people identifying as female in our field, particularly in the study, which matches up with the demographics of the field. We had a few males there. You can see that we had a pretty equal distribution between behavior technicians and our registered behavior technicians. When you look at those numbers, they're pretty close to one another. And this was helpful that we had a good matching, because when you do a study, you want your study to be as equivalent as possible. Now, through Central Reach, the way we have this, or at least the way it's being conceptualized, Central Reach is building different AI products, and Carrie is the name that we have, and Carrie's just an amalgam of AI and Central Reach. So you mix it up and you get Carrie. And there are different products that are being researched and eventually will come to the market. We have the Care Copilot is designed for RBTs. We'll have a Care Coordinator, which is going to be designed for BCBAs. We have Care Companion, which is going to be delivered for parents and caregivers. And these are different things that are being built. But the study that we worked on was the Care Copilot, and that's with the RBTs. So this is what we did. We had this chatbot, and when we worked with our colleagues, some of the places we went to in person, and some of the places we did virtual. And these are the actual slides that I won't go over all of them, but you can see we have 7 slides in total, and we shared what our agenda was, and there are some codes there that we had them click on or scan, and that would give them access to what our methods were, and it later would give them access to the actual Copilot. And with this study, you can see that once they went in there, let me go back here. Once the RBTs went in there, if you look to the bottom right slide, we gave them guidelines for usage. They always had this, like, this is technology. And these are folks that had different degrees of awareness and experience working with these chatbots. So we gave them as many job aids as possible so that we could make this easy for them. The other thing that we did is we had BCBAs that were involved in this, and these were the supervisors. And what we wanted to do with the supervisors is they had access to see on the back end all of the questions that the RBTs and the BTs were asking. And that will have important ramifications for later use. We'll do more studies on that, but we wanted to just get a little sample of and investigate what did the BCBAs think about this. And of course, if anything alarming came up in the chat, we wanted the BCBAs to have instant knowledge of that. And that's why we gave them access. The other thing we did with their supervisor dashboard is not only could they see the content of all the questions, they could see how often they were happening, and we asked them to rate the questions. So Jeff asked the question about supervised learning. We had the BCBAs rate this, and we wanted to see what were their opinions on the questions that were being asked in the responses that our chat Copilot was doing. So that this is going to give us some external validity by including them in the study. So what do we find out by doing this study? This study, right now, if you were all to do a literature review and try to find studies in behavior analysis and folks doing stuff with AI, you're not going to find much. I'll tell you that right now. You can find a few papers out there where people are starting to talk about AI, starting to talk about the ethics. I'm working on this paper. I'm writing this up, and hopefully this is one of the first database studies that's out there. Like I said, it's a descriptive study. There's so much more that's going to need to be done in our field. And hopefully once this is submitted, this is something that folks find that's useful. So if any of you are interested, after I'm done talking, if you want a copy of my slides, if you want access to the manuscript once I'm done writing it up, if you send me an email, feel free to do that. I don't know if I guess well, you can just Google my name. I have different kinds of email addresses, and you can just literally send me an email, and I'll keep that, and then I'll share this with you. So what do we find? This first question was looking at usage patterns. What kind of questions were people going to ask the chatbot? And here you can see that when we look at several of the questions, these are the categories of questions that people were asking. And ABA fundamentals and concepts. What are the functions of behavior? This is what you might expect from people that are very new to the field. We had a mixture, as I mentioned earlier. Some of these folks were very green. Some of these folks, this was their first job. Some of these other folks, this was not their first job. You can see there were questions about behavior management strategies, people asking about how do you do different ABA techniques. Some people did ask questions specifically about their clients. We told them that that wasn't programmed into this. Right now, there's a study that we're going to do in the near future where we're going to actually program client-specific data. It'll have the chatbot will have access to it. I shouldn't say data. Well, I will say data, and we're going to examine that. But right now, this chatbot just had questions about ABA, as I mentioned, a deep level of ABA, and we have many, many resources in Central Reach where we have loaded this up. But nevertheless, people did ask questions about their clients. And we programmed guardrails into our chatbot. And if someone asks a specific question like, hey, I'm working with client X, and I want to know, how do I stop my client from being aggressive? The chatbot would say, look, I don't have access to your client. You need to ask your BCBA. And those guardrails were very important for us because we didn't. You could go right now to OpenAI or to Anthropic, Claude, ChatGPT, and you could ask them, I have a client X that does blah blah blah. How should I respond to it? And that chatbot will give you an answer. That's not the most ethical thing to do. So we're very concerned about the ethics around here, which is why we have all these guardrails, which is why we're doing this study. Nevertheless, you can see what those questions are. This is the number. This is a graph showing you the number of questions that they asked. They asked the most questions around ABA fundamentals and concepts, which made sense because we had several people that were taking the RBT, that were going to sit for the RBT exam. And you can see at the bottom, we had some people that were asking about ABA being used in different settings and how to use different tools. This was hooked up to Central Reach database, and some of these BTs and RBTs had to interface with some of our software, so they could ask a question like, hey, how do I do X on Central Reach? And the chatbot would answer them. And that's what that very last category is. But a lot of them, you can see, didn't ask that question. This is we ran this for roughly 2 months, a little under 2 months. And you can see that this is the daily usage of it. Now you might say, whoa, what's going on there? That's when we started the Proud Moments New York cohort. And once we brought them on, there were 20 some people. You can see that there was just a burst of questions. And if you take all of these and you take the mean, we use the formula called the geometric mean, which is different from the arithmetic mean. The geometric mean is better to use when you have outliers like that. And so the geometric mean tells us, on average, it gives us a good representation of how many questions were people asking through the day. You basically see they're asking about 6 questions per day, which isn't bad for this user base. Again, this study was voluntary. These folks did not have to do this if they didn't want to do it. We weren't forcing them to use this chatbot. We were encouraging them to use it. This was a study where we wanted to get their use of it, but we weren't telling them, hey, you have to use this every day. Otherwise, the usage would have been inflated more. And this gives us a nice representation of what it looks like across the study. We also looked at our BCBAs, and we wanted to examine, what do they think? This is the supervisors. What do they think about the questions that were being asked and the responses? So they were rating the responses that the chatbot gave. And you can see that almost 50% of the responses given were excellent. That's encouraging. Another 37% was good. If you add those two up, that's 85% of the responses by this chatbot was excellent to good. You will notice that that's not 100%. As I said earlier, technology isn't perfect, and we shouldn't expect any technology to be perfect. And we can see that 8% said it was fair. And we did have about 6% that said it was poor. That means that from an organizational perspective, if you find that the answers are poor for whatever reason, you need to dig in to those questions and look at, why are the behavior analysts rating these as poor? Is it an ethics question? Is it factually saying something wrong? Why is someone rating that as poor? And then you need to fix it. And through this iteration of having humans being in the loop, humans supervising this, these tools will get better. And as a result, when these tools get better, that means that all kinds of positive things can happen. Now, I have a colleague that is in another organization, and this is a massive organization. They're in, I don't know if they're in almost 15 states in the United States, really big organization. And he told me the biggest barrier, one of the biggest barriers for him with RBTs is getting the RBTs to ramp up, because there are some states where if you don't have your RBT, you cannot practice. And that means that these RBTs, if they don't pass the test, then that's a huge barrier for them. And if this technology can help RBTs ramp faster through passing the test, through onboarding, and there's a lot of things that can happen, then that is good for the organization, and that's good for our field, and of course that's good for our client. I could talk about this a lot, but as you all may know, there are still just way too many wait lists for people to get ABA services, and that's cause for a whole host of reasons. So everything that we can do, if we can get help getting people ramped up, then this technology serves a vital purpose. Second question, does this chatbot help BTs and RBTs in a socially valid way? And I won't go over everything that we asked, but we did have some customer satisfaction questions that we asked. For example, we asked everyone in the study, we said, do you feel that this chatbot improved your efficiency and your productivity? And you can see that we had 62% strongly agree, 23% agree. You add that up, you get 85%. That's a large majority. That's almost 9 out of 10 people saying, yes, this chatbot helped me become more efficient, more productive. You had about 12% who were neutral. You had a very small minority of folks that said they disagreed with this question. We didn't follow up with them and ask. I find it would be interesting to get in there and ask those folks, but some of these questions, no, not some of them, these questions were confidential, and we didn't have, like, I can't go back and figure out who these folks were that gave that. So this is something that I couldn't follow up with those folks, but I would like to do that in future studies. We also asked, this was a question that was geared more towards the proud moments so that we could get at situating this technology. And the question was, do you have resources and support needed to complete your job sufficiently? If you went on to proud moments, this is a question that's being asked of the organization. We wanted to know that when you are onboarded with this organization, is this organization giving you the resources and support that you need to complete your job? And the reason why we asked this question is one of the contributing factors in staying employed and in the retention literature is, are you being supported? And when I say support, this can manifest in many different ways. If you are in an organization and I were to ask you, what does that mean to you? What does it mean to support your employees? If you have BTs or RBTs, what would you envision as support? Is it talking to someone? Is it giving someone a computer? Is it giving someone access to materials? There's all sorts of ways of being supportive. Again, these questions are broad, but the answers to this are helpful for us. This tells us that and again, this study is looking at all the folks, this particular one that had access, this question's asking everybody, did you feel support? And you see 89% of the folks said that they felt supported. And we find that, that speaks well, and of course that speaks well to the organization, that many of the people felt supported. And I'll talk more about that once we get to this next slide coming up with retention. We also asked one other question I'll go over. Would you recommend this to your fellow RBTs? And this is a good indicator of social validity. Would you recommend something to someone else? These questions, when we gave it to them, as I mentioned, they were responding. Their responses were anonymous. We didn't know exactly who was responding to this with our study, and we wanted that so that the participants could feel free to respond as honestly as they could, and we didn't want them feeling pressure that, like, okay, they're the new person on the block, and somehow that if they rated this negatively, that would somehow impact their future employment. So we set this up so that was not a barrier. But what you see is 77% said, yes, I would recommend this to folks. You had another 20% that said they weren't sure, and then you had a very small minority of people that said that they weren't. We did follow-up interviews with folks, and I'm going to show you a few people, and these are just short clips, but these are their words when we asked them different questions about the chatbot and their usage with it.
I think it was I feel like the AI is obviously new and coming up, and I feel like it's a cool way to have simple things explained to you, especially with ABA and having, like, if you have a question on just like simple terms or things. And I feel like it was pretty easy to use. I just think using it every day, I never really thought about. I would just like ask a BCBA or ask someone who's next to me, or if I had questions like look it up, I would never really think about using the chat box. But when I did use it, it was definitely super friendly, like user friendly.
Yep. Okay. Sorry. That I think there was me asking something at the end of the clip, and I thought that was Thanos jumping in, but it was actually me saying something.
No, but I will. But I will actually. I'll grab the opportunity. Thanks, Rick, to deliver the second keyword. So, guys, for those of you registering the words for your CEU, the second keyword is co-pilot. I repeat, The second keyword is co-pilot. Thank you.
Thank you. Two things to point out there. Number one, she liked using the co-pilot, and she said, oh, it's so much easier to just type it in. I would have never thought to type it in. That kind of access when you're on the fly, very encouraging to hear her say that. Here is another person talking about their experience with the co-pilot.
It's really good for if I didn't know how to tell a parent something. So like if I had a question and don't know how to explain it to the parent or have it in better format, I could just do that and it would give it to me very easy and I could transfer it to them.
If you've used these chatbots, you can say things like, explain this to me like I'm a fifth grader, or your prompt could be, explain positive reinforcement to a parent that knows nothing about behavior analysis. AI will do that for you. And of course, our chatbot that has been specifically trained on this content, I feel it does a better job than some of the other chatbots that I've seen out there. One more vid.
Personally, I think it would be helpful. For me, it was because I was able to have the tab up that had the chat box and Central Reach like side by side. So if my supervisor wasn't available, I just went to the chat box and asked it a quick question. And I was like, okay, it just reminded me of a strategy to use, or it reminded me of what a certain term meant. And I didn't have to bother my supervisor immediately. I just went to the chat box and it gave me the answer. So that was very convenient and helpful.
What is fascinating about what she said, how many people that are new to an organization don't want to expose that they don't know something by asking a question? I mean, that is a very human thing that many of us have probably experienced. You don't know something, but you don't necessarily want to ask the question because you're embarrassed that maybe it exposes you, that you think that you might be embarrassed to ask a particular question. Now you can just ask this chatbot. Plus, you can ask it whenever you would like to ask it. This chatbot, the way you had to interface with it was through literally typing in and chatting with it. But in the future, what we'll be able to do is you can just talk to this chatbot, and this chatbot will always be there and always be on. And that kind of accessibility, I'm excited for when we get to that next, because that makes it even more accessible. And you could be driving in your car and you could just say, you have it. Well, I'm not going to recommend you be distracted in your car. Maybe that's a poor example. You could be somewhere else and you could just ask. You could be on your walk and you just say, I wonder, what's the difference between differential reinforcement high and differential reinforcement low, or whatever. Another question that we asked was about retention rates. So retention is how many people remain employed after a certain period of time. And what we did here is we compared the folks from the Florida office after 2 months and the folks who were in the New York and Tennessee region. And this is what we found. Every single person that was part of the chatbot group remained employed after this period of 2 months. 66% of the folks remained employed. And if you recall earlier, what I shared with you is 9 out of 10 people, a very high percentage, felt they were being supported, but yet all the procedures, everyone received the same procedures. One thing that was different was this chatbot. Now, again, I'm excited about this, but I do want to, right out of the gate, express you to exercise caution when you're reviewing this. There's a lot of things that can affect retention. And I am not saying that the chatbot was the causal variable that allowed everybody, that came to 100%. It's intriguing, but I can't say that with this data. Nevertheless, these data are very interesting, and this is something that I'm going to be exploring a lot more. And when we look at our data and we look at the support, one of the things that we know is people who feel more supported, again, They feel more supported. And remember earlier on in my introduction when I was mentioning that one study that people like a friendly voice, people like to be, if you look at the data on retention, people like to be told they're doing a good job. And when you look at OBM literature, when you look at business literature and people do studies, it is incredibly valuable for people to be recognized. In some studies, they show that that recognition is more valuable than a pay raise. And you know that's fascinating when you look at that. What's the relationship here? I don't know. We need to do more research, but this is a positive finding. So let me bring this home and relate this. Did this chatbot work as intended? You know, we did this study and we wanted to find out if it worked and funded, it worked as intended. And yes, there was consistent usage over time. We had high social validity among our users. We saw that several folks said that it improved their efficiency and productivity. We found many people that said not only did they feel supported, but they felt that this was useful to them and they would recommend this to their profession, to their colleagues. So it worked as intended. And what we find is that the folks, the RBTs and the BTs, they liked it. And that's good to hear. That's good to build upon. And that was something that we wanted to ask. And now we have evidence that of this cohort, of the folks that we used, of the people that had differing experiences that have come from different places, yes, they have spoken and said that this is something that they liked. It also, when we dive in, we can see that it did help answer a variety of questions. We need to expand I mean, it is versatile, but we need to expand on that versatility. And those are things that we can ask about in the future. This is the first controlled study that I've seen of its type, and I'm pleased with the statistics and what we found out. But certainly, there are so many more questions that could be asked. There's some research out there that this particular study right here, they did a deep dive and they looked at RBTs, and these were RBTs that were working with severe problem behaviors. And if you have worked with clients that have severe problem behaviors, you know that that's a very stressful situation. And they found in this study that some of these folks were being put in with people who were having severe problem behaviors, and these folks were only having 3 to 5 hours of supervision per month. And I mean, if you're an RBT and you're working with someone that's having all these issues and you're receiving very little supervision, how do you think that's going to play out? Not well, as you can imagine. And that's what this study showed. But what would this mean? Like, this is a supplement. This technology can supplement supervision. And there's a lot more to be done here. But from the BCBAs that we surveyed and some of the questions that we asked, we think that this could be a good supplement for supervision. Again, we're not saying that these AIs are taking over the role of humans. If that ever happens, then that's going to be a very problematic situation. We don't want AI being, taking over the world and there's no need for humans anymore. That's a dystopia. AI is a tool like anything else, and we want it supplementing us. Humans always have to be in the loop. This is what behavior analysis is about, education, all the things that we do. This is where I feel we happen to be in one of the fields where AI can supplement us, but AI isn't going to replace us because we nurture our fellow humans. We have interactions with our fellow humans. And unless we move to some dystopian world that would be some terrible thing, AI is just not going to take us over. Addressing these training gaps, again, this study talked about training gaps, and we can see that AI can do it. As I mentioned, also there are ramifications for retention. we need to do more research here. There are other studies out there, and this particular study that came out recently talks about the turnover for RBTs can be as high as 75% per year. And that's incredibly high. That's, again, 8 out of 10 people are turning over. That's tough. And the reasons are supervision, support, burnout, and pay. We can handle supervision, support, possibly burnout through technology. Not so much pay, but this is something that technology can do. And of course, brand new RBTs without clients. As I mentioned before, this is one of the challenges that we had, and we need to do more research here. We also had some other challenges. This chatbot was not they had to go outside of Central Reach to access this chatbot. We would have had maybe different responses if this chatbot was within what they were using. And of course, these dashboards, the BCBAs, again, had to go outside of their workflow. And Tennessee and New York had different durations. But overall, this was the study. And go ahead and let me stop sharing, and let me ask you if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Rick. That was super, super interesting, and I'm sure colleagues will agree. And it raises so many implications for next steps for our field. So it's really encouraging to see some positive evidence emerging already. Guys, please do pop your questions. Rick can see the chat, but I'm also happy to pass on your questions. For those of you that are collecting the CEU, let me just start by giving the last keyword, just in case we have any folks who have parental responsibilities and need to go. The last keyword for your CEU is Terminator, only because we don't want AI to take over. So the last keyword for the CEU is Terminator. Okay. Now we have a question, Rick. When BCBA's rate answers by the chatbot as poor, which type of questions came up most frequently? So did, for example, the chatbot struggle most to answer ethical questions?
Clarissa, that's a fabulous question. I don't have an answer for you. We need to figure out what that is. I don't have that at my fingertips, but that's a really good question. I don't know. I need to look into that further.
The next question says, do you think the chatbot can answer individualized questions for clients in the future? And what if the AI would generalize the answers from one client to another? Will that be accurate? And what are the ethical concerns?
That's a huge ethical issue. And, these chatbots and the way they operate, that's a good question. Imagine this. Imagine all the documentation you have for one client. If all of that could be ingested and all the data could be ingested, these chatbots can do that. And these chatbots can give very specific questions. So I would like to think that these answers are going to be incredibly insightful, versus it won't need to, because especially if these chatbots are done right, like what you don't want to do, if you go to these commercial large language models, they're going to tend to give you more general answers. But if you have commercial programs, that could be way more specific. So that's a very good forward-thinking future question. And I'm hopeful that we have better answers and that we don't get these generalized answers.
Another question, Rick, for you. When you asked RBTs to rate how supported they felt, did you compare this with your control group, and what was the comparison like?
Through the chatbot, is that the question?
I think when you concluded your study and you were asking the social validity questions, so you asked people how supported they felt, and whether in a way that the chatbot helped them feel more supported, and whether you compared their answers to your control group's answers in terms of that.
Gotcha. That's a really good question. We asked a question about the RBT, how they, so that general support question would be, the folks that filled out the survey and it made it all the way to the end. So the folks that left the organization from Florida, they wouldn't have answered that question. There might have been a couple in there because we tried to get their questions when they left, but once they left the organization, we couldn't get that. So that is all of them, that general support question. So and that makes sense. If you're feeling supported, there's a greater likelihood that you're going to be with the organization. So that data of supported is from everybody.
Okay. I think we answered the question. We've had a follow-up explaining the question more, but I think you answered it, Rick. Another question says, are you able to share a link to the paper on the training experience of registered behavioral technicians working with individuals that exhibit severe behavioral challenge? Was that behavior analysis in practice? Do I remember correctly,
Yeah,
Rick?
it was. So the title is Registered Behavior Technicians Training Experiences for Severe Problem Behavior. This came out in 2023. If you Google it, it'll come up. You'll be able to get it from Behavior Analysis and Practice. Yeah.
Did your AI, another question says, did your AI have to achieve any kind of mastery criteria to quote unquote graduate from being supervised to transitioning to machine learning?
Wow. These are great questions. That is a question where my colleague could better answer if we have that criteria. I frankly don't know. We have a team. So Central Reach has 6 BCBA-Ds and over maybe 25 BCBAs. So there's a lot of behavior analysts in this company. And we have several that are colleagues that are working on the AI initiative. And I have my one colleague, Kelly King, who was involved. If she were here, she would be able to answer that question, but I don't know that answer. I don't know. Great question. You stumped me.
Well, I think these are all things that will be picked up in follow-up studies, and this will probably end up being quite a rich vein of literature, won't it? I can easily see a line of research developing here, so I'm sure some of these questions will be answered in due time with replication studies. Okay. People are saying it was very interesting. They're thanking you, Rick, and they really enjoyed the presentation as well as I did. So thank you very much again, Rick, for joining us today. Thank you, everybody. We have one more. I believe supervision is not something one can graduate from. The support should be consistent unless the AI follows some sort of curriculum. Yeah, well, I think the question had to do about the transition, because you kind of have to train AI, if I'm not mistaken, before you kind of release it to its own devices. And I think that was what the original question about mastery criteria was about, if that makes sense. So
Yep.
thank you, everybody. It looks like we've answered most of the questions. As I said, please remember to click on the links, because once I conclude the session, the links will disappear from the chat. So make sure you have access to the forms for the feedback and the CUs. And I will prepare your certificates within about a month. Usually do so before our next one, which is going to be next month. Rick, thank you again. And take care, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.